first item is Costage Engineering on behalf of Donovan Flex Business Park. Under contract for 3 parcels down on Donovan. What I'm going to ask them to do is please give us an idea of what it is you're trying to do, what you're looking for as you come forward, and we will go there. Go ahead again.
Sorry, we're having a sidebar conversation.
Okay. Go for it. Hi.
Good evening. My name is Mike Ritchie from Costage Engineering, representing the developers of the project. Also here in attendance are the current owners of the property. So the proposed plan is the development of 6 flex storage buildings on 3 existing parcels. Lot R7, sorry, R5, R6, and R7. Those buildings range in size from the largest being 14,400 square feet to the smallest of about 5,400 square feet. These are going to be metal storage buildings, architecturally, gray, something neutral in color, and they're going to be broken up into roughly 30-foot wide units. The plans show dashed lines which are meant to represent the individual units. So based on the size of the lot, dictated kind of the size of the buildings. Lot R5 was the larger of the 3 lots. So that had the 14,000 square foot building that's approximately 60 feet wide. As you go east along the property, there's the middle one, which is a little bit tight, and those depth of those buildings shrunk down to about 50 feet. So generally, the units will be about 1,800 to 1,500 square feet in size. And the use is primarily going to be for storage. The owners or the developers can speak to it if you have questions. But what was expressed to me was, somebody may own a boat and they want to store it indoors instead of outdoors over the winter. Somebody may have, a construction business or a landscape business and they want to store some equipment out of the elements. It's not intended for store space or, primarily customer visiting. It's more for storage, drop-off, and leaving. So all 6 buildings will be designed essentially with the same layout. They'll have bathrooms and plumbing within, heating. It will meet the current code requirements. With that being said, we've designed the site to meet all of the applicable codes. We don't anticipate any variances being required for setback, for height, for parking. All the properties will have stormwater management. We submitted a voluminous SWIP, which I apologize for the amount of paper we printed out on that one. Should have done double-sided. We've prepared a long-form EAF. We've reached out to RG&E. I skipped over it. This property was before this board last year with a different development on it. Wetlands were delineated by a consultant, but at that time they weren't verified by the Army Corps of Engineers. Subsequent to the original delineation, the Army Corps went out, did their field visit, and they determined that there was a small ditch, an existing ditch, that connected what is an existing wetland. I believe it might be tributary to 4 Mile Creek, maybe farther up north, and it connected through this little ditch, this larger wetland. So what was considered by the wetland consultant to be isolated, non-jurisdictional, essentially not a wetland in the eyes of the Army Corps of Engineers, or not one that requires permitting, this one now became regulated and jurisdictional. So because of that, the previous project, the developer really didn't have a path forward with his plan. The current owners were reached out to buy it, and Hostage, having history on the property, were able to come up with a design to work around the wetlands. So we are proposing a small disturbance to this wetland ditch, roughly 7/100ths of an acre, under the 10th acre threshold that would typically cause more of a rigorous review by the Army Corps of Engineers. We still will need a permit from the Army Corps of Engineers, and we're going to work with our wetland consultant, Scott Livingstone, to obtain that permit. I did reach out to RG&E because just south of Donovan Street is a RG&E owned property that goes all the way out to Phillips Road. And this project would need 2 easements actually for the 2 separate driveways through the RG&E property in order for this to be viable. Previously, for the last project, we reached out to RG&E and they were in support of it, and they were going to submit to Public Service Commission. They are still in support of it and are planning on reaching out to Public Service Commission once and if a project were approved. But it was stated to me that understanding how projects need to work and how slow the Public Service Commission could be, that RG&E could issue an interim license to allow the developers to access the property while waiting for the formal easement to be in place. Could be 90 days, 120 days down the road. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions the board has. I think this is a good use for the property. Yeah, happy to hear any questions you have.
I have one. Are we limited to the use of these buildings going to be for storage and storage only?
I can't, yes. And again, I think the caveat being if a tenant came in and wanted a use that didn't fall within the code or a use that required a special use permit, it's our understanding that they'd have to come to the board to obtain a special use permit if they were intending to use their portion, not for storage. Is that correct? That's how I understood it when I meant.
Would that be for any use of that particular space, or just those things that wouldn't require our approval?
And correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it's any use that doesn't fall into the existing code and would require a special use permit, is the way I understood it.
If it requires a change of use for the village code, it's going to apply for these spaces as well. Because you could have a landscaper renting it out and running his business out of there, and then it be turned into something else after, if that landscaper moved out, so.
Height of the building?
I believe, I'm sorry, I have it on the plan. Yeah, I believe it is 32 feet, because it's dictated, yeah, 32 feet is the height, and that's the same height for all the buildings, which dictates the setback.
And just help me with that.
Mhm.
How is that in reference to the same level as the expressway?
Oh, jeez. I can't reference the height of 104 in relation to the height of those buildings. I do know there is a pretty dense tree buffer along that south property line, which is proposed to remain. So I don't know the height of those trees, but I would imagine the majority of them are over the height of the building. So I would think that much of this project would be screened from 104 by the existing vegetation. I just from driving this road every day, I believe that that 104 is maybe 10, 12 feet higher than the grade back at this property. So part of the roof may be visible this time of year from 104.
Okay, and my last question, just the setting here, does that run all the way over to Phillips Road? I couldn't tell on the map that I had.
This property?
Yes,
Yeah, it does.
the green property with the 6 buildings on it, does it run all the way over to Phillips Road?
It does, yes, it's a flag lot. Actually, this lot 7 is separate. They're all 3 separate lots. So this lot 7, yes, does connect to Phillips Road.
Would it be access off Phillips Road, or would the access remain off Donovan or otherwise?
We're currently proposing the access only off Donovan. There'd be a shared access agreement between these 2 lots to enter this lot. If down the road the property were sold or a different owner came in, they'd have to make application with this board and also obtain approval from county DOT. The previous project, the developer was hoping to get access to Phillips Road, and we worked with county DOT, and based on the width of the flag lot, when it was set up, it worked for 2-way traffic, but now, based on how much room they need, it really is only suitable for one-way only. So that's not currently what we're showing, but if one access down the road were to be proposed, it has to come back to this board and obviously go back to county DOT.
Is there an access road for RGE still coming off of Phillips Road?
Yeah, the existing access road is actually just to the south of that property.
And that's not going to be used by this development?
No, not all, yeah, separate properties.
Okay.
So is that the road that is currently paved?
Yes.
I mean, it's not.
Yep, that's the RG&E one that just goes back to those, yeah.
And on the other side of the development, where the trail is
Yes.
that directly right across from, at the end of your plans here?
The Hojak Trail?
Yes.
Yeah, the Hojak Trail actually runs parallel to this property,
Right.
all the way from Phillips, all the way past it. and we're proposing, 2 crosswalks where that Hojack Trail crosses the driveways.
But where the picnic benches, et cetera, are right
Oh,
now,
oh,
it's
oh,
right
oh.
there, right?
Yeah, separate property, actually. There's that trailer, I don't know.
Right, yeah, I see that.
Yeah, that's actually a separate property, separate from this, on actually the other side of the Argini property. It's a little triangular piece of property.
Right.
So the access road's coming across, that's agreed, that's going across the owner's land and Mr. Duck's?
Yep, there's a portion actually on the western driveway. Actually, that's right away. The properties, and I don't know how that was done, but where the driveway connects to Donovan Park is actually right away. And then it enters into the Argini property. So technically, it's not entering through Duck's property for the driveway.
These buildings intended to be fully conditioned at all times,
Yes,
insulated and conditioned,
yes.
heating, cooling?
Just
okay?
heating,
Just heating?
just heating.
Okay. Every individual unit, it appears, gets a sanitary connection and a water connection per unit? Are you putting in the bathrooms?
We're not 100% sure how that's going to work yet. Okay, we may let whoever rents it, if they want one, to put it in. If not, we haven't decided that far down yet.
Are all the units individually electric metered and gas metered?
Yes, sir.
So every single unit will have their own separate meter?
Yes.
Some of that will go along with how much space each tenant wants to rent out. If you have one tenant that wants to rent out half of the one building, then they don't need bathrooms for every unit. And we've already talked about, separately dividing off the spaces, and they already know they're gonna have to pull building permits. So that'll decipher with me when and how many bathrooms go in, and walls, and fire code, and there's more to it, but, yeah.
Are we limited to 6 buildings on this particular property?
Per code, or?
Well, right now, you've got some large spaces between the buildings. Could you put another building in there?
No, not without getting variance.
Okay.
Or obviously coming back to this board for approval. But yeah, that's laid out to meet code for parking, so we're pretty much right at where we need to be. I don't see fitting a building in the middle there and meeting the setbacks.
Help me understand what this thing looks like when it's all done. As I drive down Ridge Road, I see a new storage building. As we drive up and down 5 Mile Line Road, I understand there's going to be another storage location there. Or maybe there isn't, I don't know.
Not anymore, yeah.
They turned it down, all right. How would this look in comparison to the other storage spaces?
Right. It's not going to look like the life storage right here next to the ice cream place with the brick. This is more going to be the building that was just put up across from Kittleberger's. I think that's more architecturally how this is going to look. It's going to be metal clad, metal roof, not with the ornate, brick of the one on Ridge Road. More traditional storage units. The one on Salt Road, just north of Xerox, that park back there. Yeah, it's going to be metal-clad buildings with, generally one overhead door per unit.
So overhead doors, no storefronts,
No,
No.
no man doors?
a man door for each,
Each
yes.
one will
There will be
have a
man
door and
doors.
an overhead door?
Windows associated with each unit?
No.
I mean, generally, the doors aren't, with the exception of one building, aren't opening up towards Donovan, and the one that is opening up towards Donovan is actually to the east of the curve in the road. So you're likely either gonna see the back of the building or the side elevation of the buildings from Donovan.
Has the fire marshal reviewed this plan? Because this site is tight, and it's gonna be real tight with buildings,
Right. We
because
did,
it certainly doesn't look like you have the right turning radiuses and stuff for fire equipment to get in and out.
yeah, and we ran the turning movements, and obviously they'd have to do, K-turns to make some of these maneuvers. We did get one comment from Aaron that the drive for Lot 5 be extended to the western corner of the building to provide the 150-foot access for fire hoses.
Fire marshal has reviewed these, and there was a few changes that we talked about, being the access roads have to be 30 feet wide, not the 26. The aisleways, we'll call them, have to be 26 feet wide for fire apparatus, so everything was reviewed, and they are making those changes for the fire marshal, fire code.
So Mike, speaking of turning movements, I guess I would just have a look at the dumpster enclosure for R6.
Yeah.
I'd be curious on how a dumpster truck is going to maneuver that.
Yeah, we may need to look at relocating that to a different spot on the property, maybe, maybe put it more on the western side of it so it can back out and then exit instead of having to reverse out through the whole property.
And if this was to proceed, I would request some, pedestrian crossing signs at the both entrances type of thing.
Sure.
I know it's a metal clad building and all that, it'd be kind of nice to just see a rendering of colors and whatever, you're thinking type of thing. That's a lot.
We do the same color still.
Yeah. Well, Dave just said they're gonna do the same color scheme as Kittleberger's.
We're gonna do basically the
Gray
same
and
color
black.
scheme as Stillburgers, so,
That's a gray or something?
yeah,
Gray and black.
dark gray, light gray.
Dark brown or something.
Yeah.
No, it's gray and black. The bottom is black, the bottom 3 feet is black with the top gray, and then I believe the roof is black as
Yes.
well.
So you're thinking the same thing then, having
Absolutely.
at least a different look of providing a break or something, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
To be clear, these aren't like the self-storage units. We're not talking.
No,
we're
I just-
talking- Yeah.
Do you have any access controls? Or is it just wide open? Are the roads gonna be gated,
No,
no,
fully open?
fully open.
we are proposing some lighting throughout the site, just for safety and,
Security.
security, so.
I know we haven't had to deal with it a lot this year, but have you guys thought through a snow management plan? Because we're not gonna get a winter like this all the year. So snow removal and storage is always a big deal. You got room for that.
Yeah, we can, obviously, we're gonna move this dumpster on the north side of that western lot. There's room to push it there. There's room on the south side of that lot to push it out of the way. And then, on the middle lot, you can kind of push snow one side or the other. It's not gonna be curbed. It's just gonna be open, so you can push it to either side of the parking area. And similarly, we can look to relocate that dumpster enclosure. And for that far eastern lot, you can push to the south. And then, again, we're not proposing a driveway to fill up, so you can kind of push it all back towards the eastern portion of the project. They get pretty creative with moving snow around.
Other questions and comments on this?
So there's really no proposed landscaping?
No, we're just lawn, we're not, again, if the board had any, if they wanted any landscaping near the access drives, but for the most part, this site is fairly well hidden from, most everybody. I know, the comment about the height of the building and 104, I do believe, leaving that existing vegetation, between 104 and our limits of disturbance will provide a pretty good buffer to 104.
So you said the height of the building is what, 37 feet?
32 feet,
32 feet.
and I believe that's to the peak.
Yeah.
To the peak.
104 is only 9 feet
Yeah,
above this side, so you're gonna be,
right. But again, you know, there's a mix of a lot of pine and deciduous trees that are 20, 40, 50 feet in height, you know, so that they should help buffer the building. I'm not saying it's gonna buffer completely, especially with leaves off, you're gonna see it. But hopefully it won't be, you know, sticking up above 104 to the point where it's obnoxious.
Back to landscaping, just so you're aware, DEC requires some landscaping in all the bioretention areas and the stormwater facilities.
Yep, I think we left it as grass, and we can revise that and add some low shrubs, landscaping shrubs, just for.
Yeah, just to meet their standards.
Yep.
We usually are presented with sketch of the buildings and landscaping, lighting, outside lighting.
I apologize, I think the plans that were submitted were lacking the lighting plan, which we do have prepared, and I can submit to Aaron. The site plan shows the locations of the poles, though. We are proposing a number of pole-mounted lights at the driveways along the main access, and in this larger parking lot, and then the bulk of the lighting after that will be building-mounted lighting. And again, primarily for security purposes. It'll all be LED, full cutoff, dark sky compliant lighting.
What would be your schedule on this?
I can't speak for all of their intentions, but I do know their plan is to build lot R5, the western lot, now, and then based on demand, build out going east in the future. So lot R5 being separated by the wetland, you know, stormwater and the access drive and all utilities can be installed completely separately from the other lots.
Are there going to be any water or discharge permits with the county or the state?
There'll be a speedies permit.
There will be a speedies permit.
Yeah, we're gonna be over an acre, so we'll need a stormwater permit from the state. And we'll submit a NOI and an MS4 form and get that signed and submitted. And stormwater inspections will be done.
The state will come out and do regular inspections? of those?
No, either us or another consultant will do it, and we submit it to Aaron and, you know, do the weekly inspections, and then when the work's done, we would close the permit out. But yeah, we do the inspections during construction.
Thoughts or questions? Additional questions? All right. So then the variance that you're looking for is?
We're requesting preliminary and final site plan approval from this board, which is what was submitted on the application form, I believe. We don't require any variances, area variances or use variances for the project, so just site plan approval. So we did apply for preliminary and final approval. We submitted the long form EAF for the project. So if the board was comfortable with seeker and preliminary final, that's what we requested today.
Okay, thank you. I got no other questions. What we'll do is we'll give the public an opportunity to comment, pro or otherwise. Anyone want to speak from the general public?
Richard Walder, 20 Elm Street. I have just one question is on the usage. I'm afraid I was a little unclear. You mentioned lawn and garden storage, or would people be working on their equipment in there? If they're storing it there, I can see them trying to work on the equipment. As a past active member of the fire department, there was used to be a Quonset hut type building down on Phillips Road until the guy lit up a torch to try to work on some of his equipment. Unfortunately, lawn and garden equipment contains gasoline. Being a Quonset hut type metal building, it was extremely hard for the fire department to gain access to that building because with the intensity of heat and smoke inside, they basically had to try to cut holes through heavy metal construction to gain access to ventilate the building enough that they could even get in. And so I wonder, is there going to be these lawn and garden or people using the building being allowed to do any kind of work in the building?
I can go up and address the board to that question. I guess the short answer is that's unknown at this point, kind of who the tenants would be. You know that I'm speaking with Aaron, you know, any use that did come in and need to comply with the village's code and, you know, I agree with the statement, you know, any user that comes in that works on equipment, there's you know, a risk for hazard. And I guess with that being said, I think primarily the use is storage. Now, that's not to say that somebody who stores their, you know, lawnmowers there isn't going to do small maintenance, but again, we're not proposing a mechanic shop or a repair shop in any of these units. So I don't know if that necessarily answers the question. I don't know if Aaron has any guidance on what would require a special use permit and what wouldn't, and if, you know, some of these, I guess, heavier industrial uses would be allowed or not allowed. And I don't know, Dave or Joe, if you have any comment on that.
I think they would have to see Aaron for if they want to do something special in one of the buildings, okay?
Yeah.
We're just proposing the main building, okay, the open space, okay? If they want to proceed further and work on something, they'd have to get a permit from the village.
Well,
Aaron.
the trouble seems to be, would be that they rent the building to store the equipment. Unbeknownst to you or Aaron, on a nice day when they're not mowing or plowing snow, they're in there working on their equipment without your knowledge or his knowledge. I mean,
Well, they're renting that space, so they'd be allowed to work on their equipment in their own space. As long as they're not doing it for hire for somebody else, then that's allowed.
yeah, well, like I say, there used to be a Quonset building,
Yeah,
a storage building down near the end of Phillips Road.
right.
But they would still be required to be in compliance with anything on the speeding permit, any discharge permits, but would it prevent them from changing belts on a mower? I don't think so.
Would it prevent them from getting the welder out and trying to straighten the bent parts and fix things?
Good question.
Unfortunately, I can't answer what
Yeah.
anybody could do there, but I know
I mean,
the owners would make sure that whoever comes in has to get a special use permit, and Aaron is at least aware of who the user is.
I could suggest at least something be written in the lease that would supposedly prevent it.
Prevent what though? I'm not following. Prevent
Prevent
from
the
them
use,
working on their own equipment in their own leased space? They're not
the
gonna do that?
using of any hazardous type equipment to work on that equipment, like, and there's a lot of people that can use a cutting torch that don't know how to use a cutting torch.
These are metal lined buildings, it's not wood inside. So it's a non-combustible area that we're giving them.
And they're high base.
So it's a metal roof and metal inside, and it's all non-combustible. So it's not like wood where a spark is gonna catch it on fire.
Well, the fire I'm referencing, it was a metal building, and that was the problem. It was too fireproof to get into it.
I guess
I
I'm gonna
think
have to
probably
defer
the
to-
one thing that you could do, and that may be something that we want to discuss at some point, but the one thing you could do is you could put an open flame permit requirement inside the building. Then what you've said is you haven't said you can't do it, you've said we will go through a permitting process. The permitting process will look at what you're doing, what's there for prevention, and it's done.
So each unit's gonna be required, once we know what they're doing, they're gonna be required for, fire inspections and everything else. So the fire marshal's gonna be well aware of what's going on in it as well as I am, so. I mean, I don't wanna sit there and,
You don't want to go down every time?
no.
Understood, but I did, well put, thank you very much. Other comments or thoughts? Okay, What we have before this board then is a plan to approve as they are written and as it's in front of us. I don't see anything. Please do.
Mike, is there any, what's the thought on having the 2 or the 3 lots? Is there, can we combine this into one lot?
I think the thought is that not knowing what the owners want to do down the road, if somebody comes and says, hey, I'd like to buy these 2 buildings, they can sell them. If it's all one lot, then you have to go back through the re-subdivision process, and it makes it a little bit more complicated. I understand from a tax perspective, it might be easier if it's one lot now, but I think they like the flexibility down the road to, you know, if the offer came to them to sell those lots, that they could.
So then my one question or concern would be with lot R5 and lot R6, you got the stormwater facility that's going over the property line.
Right, and
I
there
would
needs
see about trying to,
an easement.
well, either an
Or a
easement
maintenance agreement.
or if you can modify the stormwater facility so it's all on one lot.
Yeah, you know, the intent, and yes, we can do that. You know, we may have to have an easement for the discharge
Right.
pipe to run
Oh,
through
yeah.
the lot.
Yeah,
Because, yeah, there's no reason that, so these 2 stormwater ponds, as they're designed now, function as one pond. They're interconnected with a pipe
yep,
to allow, to maximize the storage. Mike, to your point, if they are separate lots and you have neighbors that don't agree,
right.
you know, we could pull that back and keep this stormwater pond completely separate and then just grant an easement to have this stormwater discharge line discharged to the ditch. So
Yeah.
we can revise that.
Yeah, I mean, generally, a person that, you know, buys one lot that doesn't like the other lot won't know that there's a pipe necessarily under the ground maybe, and I'm not worried about the equalization pipe, but it's just the, hey, you're not maintaining that part of the pond, and,
Understood. Yeah, I don't want to cause
right,
issue to the neighbor
Right.
unbeknownst to them. So yeah, that's not an issue, I can change that.
They're separate lots. They should be separate lots, not interdependent.
well,
Well, within reason.
right. All right, that's the only question I have.
All right, well, thank you. All right, so we've had our public comments or public discussions.
I think, just so the record's clear, it's subject to a public hearing. Okay, so I think you should open it, you're a little kind of informal here. You should open it for a public hearing, ask if any members of the public wish to speak, and then close the public hearing.
Right.
As put,
Any other comments?
we are in a public session right now. Are there any other comments from the public, either for or against this? They can bring up the comment that would be in their mind. Otherwise, what we will do is we will give time for that, then we will close that, and then the board will try and make its decision. Comments or thoughts?
No further
We've
comments.
had yours, thank you very much. Any other ones? Okay. Just let the meeting minutes know that we did open it up to the public. We did get one comment. We opened it up for any additional comments. We didn't get any. We've closed that session. Now what we've got then is this item in front of the board for a vote, either for or against it.
Well, they're asking for 2 different approvals. Preliminary site plan approval and final site plan approval. Now, you don't have to give both all in the same meeting. In fact, it's unusual for both to be given all in the same meeting. And I'm just a suggestion, you know, we've heard that the roadways as submitted on these plans are going to be wider, 30 feet instead of 26 feet. And we've heard that a pond is, the one pond should be solely on lot R5. My recommendation is that they come back after you get a plan that corresponds to what in fact they're going to do before you approve it. So you can give preliminary approval with those conditions, but I would suggest not give final approval till you see what the actual final site plan is going to be. Also, there was a suggestion that perhaps a sketch of the buildings might be
Yes.
supplied, which I don't think is unreasonable. So you can actually see, have some type of rendering as to what's being built or proposed to be built.
I agree.
And before you can give any kind of approval, there is seeker that you have to deal with. And arguably, this is a type 1 action because it is contiguous to a publicly owned or operated recreation area, the Hojack Trail. So you need to, they submitted the long form rather than the short form, which is good, but you need to go through that in detail, and especially with respect to the Hojack Trail, make sure there's not going to be any adverse environmental impacts. So that would be step 1 before you give even preliminary approval, is you got to take care of seekers.
Okay, who's had a chance to take a look at the seeker review? Who's got questions or comments associated with it, or believe that it's complete or not complete, or want to make an action associated with it?
This is what we can do. I'll just go through it step by step now.
Say that again, Lloyd.
Are there additional permits that have to be received from the county, the state, the town, anyone other than the village?
We will need Monroe County Water Authority approval for service connection and for backflow. We'll need health department approval for backflow as well. I don't believe any other county or state permits aside from the Speedy's permit are required. And obviously, we'll need building permits from the village, but I don't believe any other permits are required. We'll need an easement from RG&E and their approval from the Public Service Commission. But I believe generally we're requesting water and sanitary services and backflow prevention are the bulk of the other approvals that would be required.
Any DOT impacts with sight lines for the new entrances coming off the road into the property and out of the property? Or
I don't believe so. I mean, we are coming in perpendicular to Donovan. Donovan is a fairly low volume road, and additionally, the proposed use is very low volume. You're going to be 30-foot wide access drives, and on the western lot, I've driven down here dozens of times. I don't see any sight line issues for either driveway. It's, I think, clearly wide open to the west, and then again you have that curve that goes north, and then I believe you have fairly decent sight lines to the curve and very well to the middle lot. And again, I think that would, any traffic on Donovan is going slower around there. I guess short answer to my long answer is no, I don't anticipate any sight distance issues.
And I did have Jake Swingman, head of our DPW and sewer. He did review all these plans and he's set with, yeah.
Jake did suggest, and I'll bring up, there's one comment he did have for me. He provided some old record drawings, he said before 104 was built. Potentially there's, they don't have any record of it besides an old record map. There may be a sanitary manhole somewhere on the southern portion of this property. And we're gonna send our survey out to see if we can find that, potentially tying there instead of having to make a curb cut into Donovan to connect to the cemetery. That's the only comment he had for me.
I didn't see anything on the plans, any plans for monument signs on the road or signage for the property?
No, no monument signs, no directional signs or anything like that.
No building signage?
Nope, no building signs.
Real quick to clarify, you were talking about the crosswalk signage.
Mm-hmm.
Are you wanting freestanding or just?
Whatever MUCD.
Yeah.
Other thoughts or comments?
I don't think so. But we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, I have, they're talking about real quick. Seems how they're not doing final today, we're also gonna be waiting to hear back from county comments or anything that's always submitted, so. Just standard practice from, county planning, so.
I just wanna make sure.
Yeah.
Mike, you got something we should all be,
Well, no, I just want to make sure we're all on the right page and doing the, I don't want to cause any confusion for them, and I don't want to cause any confusion to you, so I just.
Well, because it's a type 1 action, seeker requires a coordinated review. Part of that is determining if there are any other involved agencies. Potentially, I guess it's Monroe County Department of Health and the DEC. So this board could have itself be the lead agency, but then you gotta put the other county and the DEC on notice, and they got 30 days to respond back. You probably won't hear anything back from them, but you still gotta go through the process of undertaking a coordinated review before you can do the preliminary site plan approval.
Okay, let's do it then.
Oh, but you said you submitted to the county.
That's under General Municipal Law 239M.
See, that's what.
You know, every site plan, whenever there's site plan approval that's required, you gotta submit it to the county planning. But that's something separate from seeker. And technically, you're supposed to, the county's got 30 days from when they receive the referral to make their comments, and this board should not grant an approval during those 30 days until you wait till you hear from them.
so do we grant a preliminary approval or no then?
Because of the seeker requirements, I don't think you can. You gotta go, and it's only because if this weren't a type 1 and it's because of the Ojak Trail, you know, you wouldn't have to go through the coordinated review process, but we have to because of the recreational area that this is contiguous to.
So then our action is to submit the plan for approval.
Well, the first action would be to take a motion to appoint yourselves, the zoning board, as the lead agency. And then after that, then Aaron and/or Jake will put together the letter that will go out to the county and the state to start that coordinated review process.
Okay, I'll make that motion if we're ready for that.
I'm ready for it.
All right, so I hereby make a motion for the village zoning board to act as lead agency for seeker action for, as a type 1 project for this project.
And that the village make those notifications
Yeah.
to the county and to the state.
As lead agency, that's
Okay.
our requirement.
All right.
I'll second.
So we have that motion on the floor. We have it seconded. All in favor as it is?
All right,
Aye. Opposed? None. You've got it to go forward there as we put it down.
So, Aaron, will your office submit to the involved or interested agencies, or do you want us to? And if you're going to, do you want us to provide you with additional copies of the application material? And has there been a determination of who those involved or interested agencies would be?
Yeah, I mean, looking at,
Well, we're looking at your FEA,
Right, yep.
and you identified Monroe County Department of Health, the New York State DEC, and the Army Corps of Engineers, the federal agency.
Yeah,
So that's what we're going
those are the
on.
agencies.
That's what we're going on.
Okay, and Aaron, do you want our office to submit those and provide
do
you?
you have anything from them already or no? Any of the letters or anything like that?
Not regarding seeker, no. No, and we haven't submitted to the health department yet for backflow. And again, we're in the process of getting the Army Corps permit, but again, not related to seeker, so.
Yeah.
However you wanna
Aaron,
do it.
based on the responses that we get from those agencies,
Yeah,
we will then take it back here
Yes.
for final approval.
And it's 30 days, they have up to 30 days, but if we can get the responses before that,
yeah.
I mean, I'm assuming your next scheduled meeting we wouldn't make, because by the time we submit, 30 days would be after the
Well,
next meeting.
They would consider tabled application,
Yeah.
so then they could,
Come back at any time.
they're providing new information and
So would there be a special meeting, or, I don't know when the March scheduled meeting is, but I'm assuming it's going to be,
March
3/16.
okay, so it's less than 30 days
Yeah.
from now, so if we submit it tomorrow, we wouldn't be able to make the April meeting. Is there a way to have the village board have a special meeting after the
Well, I
30
mean, I
days?
think-
Or if I can get responses from these
I was
agencies?
saying, we can get responses from these agencies quick enough and before the deadline for the next zoning board meeting, then we wouldn't need to do a special meeting. We could have it at the regular scheduled one, I believe. So we can kind of play the waiting game, to be honest with you.
Okay, well, we'll get those,
Because if we can get that done, I mean, honestly, we can get these done within the next day or two. It's not like it's something spectacular that it's going to take
no,
2 weeks to write up, you know?
right, it's just we need somebody
But
to,
generally it's the village that submits.
Yeah.
and I can provide you with those extra copies of the application.
Yeah, they'll just need extra copies of the
I'll
plans.
get you those tomorrow.
Yeah, I've got some plans still left
Technically, I
over.
think they're supposed to have all the application material and SWIFT and everything that we.
You're gonna make a copy of this?
I'll shrink it down.
Wait, should they not modify the plans?
no, I think they should.
Yeah, I think,
Modify the plans
Yeah.
first, then submit the revised
Wow.
package. right?
No, well, they don't need that for the coordinated review.
No, yeah, they don't need
But
that stuff.
because if they want to be on the March 16th,
But we need to provide you revised plan.
it would be beneficial for them to take in our
Yeah.
comments today and then bring that.
Oh, okay.
Yep, we can do that, we will do that. So Aaron, I'll get you the 3 extra copies, Aaron, we just talked about.
Type one.
Which is-
We're sure it's a type one.
That's what Jake and I, you know.
I was in.
Yes, yes, yeah. And not to speak for the board, and of course you have to take into consideration everything that's submitted. The question that was asked to me by my client, if we were to meet the seeker requirements and provide revised plans that addresses all the comments that were presented today, would there be any objection to the board granting seeker preliminary and final at the next meeting? Again, it might be a loaded question, but.
Well, I don't think you can ask them in advance how they're going to
I guess,
vote.
are there any other issues, are there any other
But
issues that we should be aware of?
Certainly you can ask for preliminary and final approval, just like you
We just did.
now. And if all your i's are dotted and t's are crossed and you submitted what they've asked you to submit,
They could,
then you're,
okay.
you know, you can probably stand a good chance. But, you know. they're not gonna-
Understood. Yeah, we can't answer that question now. Just wanted to make sure that anything else that was on the board's mind that needed to be addressed would be addressed, and if
I think the big thing is probably the rendering of the building. I mean, obviously, I think we all sort of like the Kittleberger building, so we're not opposed to it, but.
needs something you can actually see instead of
Right.
imagine.
Right.
Like the one that was proposed a year ago.
Yep, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so what I had we're gonna put the one pond solely on
Correct, yeah,
the one
separate
lot.
properties.
That way you can avoid combining the 3 parcels.
Yep.
And you're already gonna revise the road widths.
Yep, and there's the fire lane access, and there's some comments that were brought up about signage for pedestrians,
A rendering of the buildings
Yep.
and.
landscaping and the bioretention.
Yep.
Yeah, I took down a bunch of
And
comments.
then the cross,
Pedestrian
the
signs.
pedestrian signs, you know, like they have on 250 and Hope Road,
Sure.
where the Hojiak
Mhm.
crosses those,
Yeah.
same kind of those neon, green, and yellow signs.
Yep, absolutely.
Again, all this is only because of the Hojiak Trail
Sure.
going through that.
Understood, yeah, there's no, I don't think any other type 1 triggers was.
Right,
right,
no.
no.
Frankly, I was surprised for that.
Yeah. Okay, well, I appreciate your time, we'll
So then,
revise it. and-
I think what you also need then is a motion to table.
Yeah.
So then-
I'll make a motion to table until new application or additional
Additional.
Instead of the next
revised
meeting?
plans, yeah. March
Instead of
16th,
the
if
next
it's
meeting, March
available.
16th, if it's available. All right, we've got a motion on the table,
I second.
seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? None.
Thank you for your
You've
time.
got it.